transcript, and I'll show you where you can find more continuing education, all that fun stuff. So, wet food. Yeah, you had wet food. Hi, Katie Cat. We can do more wet food soon. So on the agenda today are introductions, which we're doing now, and we'll chat through the keys to button teaching, modeling, first words, and target training. This is an interactive discussion, so feel free to ask questions throughout. In the chat, it's a little bit easier for me to keep track of, and so we can talk about it in the most relevant point, but anytime is great, and we also will share resources and have more time for Q&A if it's easier to talk through. Waiting and doing that at the end would be a little bit easier. And a bit more about us. There's Bernie. While Alexander Rossi and Christina Hunger were using buttons previously with their learners, FluentPet is the original button teaching system. And our mission is to figure out how to teach dogs, cats, and the other animals we share this planet with how to talk, or an approximation of it. And we believe that pulling this off will take a village, a community that can develop and share button teaching tips and tricks, and work together to discover the most successful button teaching approaches. So that is where you all come in. Our success in this mission entirely depends on your success with your learners. And the more of us who are able to progress, the faster we can figure out just how far all this can go. And for those of you wondering how far can all this go, we think this video really helps paint a picture of what's possible. You'll probably recognize Alexis and Bunny.
The foundation for getting started with buttons is just a desire to connect. I can't remember the exact order, but I think she pressed stranger mad, and I was like, what does that mean? And then ouch paw. And then she came over to me and she put her left paw in my hand, and I was like, okay. And I looked between her toes, and she had a foxtail stuck between her toes.
This was the stranger in her paw. She said a mat between her toes.
And it's not just Bunny who can do these amazing things. I mentioned my blind cat, Jasper. He had an eye procedure and was able to request medication multiple times afterwards with eyes help or some combination like that. And it's not all medical related. There's lots of fun examples too. One of my favorite early ones was with Scout, a Catahoula mix, who would repeatedly combine water and bone. It took us a little while to figure out what she wanted, but it was ice cubes. So she got an ice cube button and was able to advocate for herself in that way. It really is amazing how creative they can be, even with a limited vocabulary. All right, so how do we begin? How do we get started? For those of you who are at the beginning of your journey here, our first step is going to be modeling. So that's what I was trying to demo with my guys at the beginning there. You want to be talking to them all the time, narrating what it is that you're doing, trying to be consistent and specific with your language. For me, before I put the buttons down, I was keeping track of everything that I was saying, and totally an optional step, but I found that helpful for me because it narrowed down where I was most consistent, what my learners were excited about, and if it was something easy to say yes to, it went on the short list as a potential starting button. So that can be helpful to keep track of, but if you want to dive in, you can always do that too. You can always re-record a button. You can always make adjustments. So don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good here. The idea is not to get stuck in the planning stage, but just to get an idea of the kind of language you're using with them. And what does come more easily and consistently to you and the other members of your household. And since modeling is how we teach our learners what these concepts mean, again, we want to be sure to pick buttons for which you can say yes to the press. We want to set ourselves up for success and capture their excitement and their enthusiasm around the board and teach them this is an amazing tool that they now have available to them. So 3 simple steps once the buttons are down. First, press that button. Something you can immediately and frequently follow through on. Again, you're going to be talking to them all throughout, but then step 2, press that button, then follow through. Show them the meaning of the word by making it happen. And step 3 is repeat. Go back to step 1 and repeat and repeat and repeat. It's a lot of repetition, especially early on while we're helping them understand the buttons have a consistent outcome each and every time. And the speed at which they pick this up has no bearing on their long-term success. I'm going to say that again. The speed that they pick this up has no bearing on their long-term success. So if you've already been modeling, it doesn't mean that your learner is less intelligent, that you've been doing anything wrong. They all pick this up at different rates. It's really a matter of showing them enough about the board that they're interested, and picking
puzzle. Outside.
Sorry.
Outside. Outside.
Picking,
Outside. Outside. Puzzle. Outside.
and then picking first buttons and words that are helpful and motivating to them, which we'll go over in just a moment. So I hit play too soon, but I have a video for you with Kelly and her learner Delmer. This is the first 24 hours that they had buttons down in their household, so you can see how much repetition she's doing throughout the day with him, and know that she's talking to him all throughout too. You're not seeing that part because it would be too long of a video otherwise, but I just want you to get an idea of how she's modeling throughout the day for him and saying yes and then following through.
Puzzle. Outside. 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 Puzzle. Outside. Pets. Puzzle. Outside. Outside. Pets. Puzzle. Puzzle.
Yes. Puzzle.
Beautiful accidental press.
Puzzle. Puzzle. Outside. 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 Puzzle. Outside. Puzzle. Outside. Outside. Outside.
So again, it's a lot of repetition, especially early on, while we're helping establish button has consistent outcome each and every time. And we want it to be fun. We want it to be engaging, something that they want, maybe something that they don't have easy access to otherwise. But ideally, it's still easy for us to say yes to as well. So if you're not around throughout the day to model, no big deal. That's just how it was for Kelly and Delmer. Here's another video with Kelly and a different learner, Nushka, doing some rapid modeling, basically pairing the button with a piece of food. That way, she's loading it kind of similar to loading a clicker. If anybody's done clicker training before, we're pairing button press, in this case that says snack, food appears, and pairing that together very, very quickly, rapid fire, time and time again. To see how Kelly's pressing that snack button, food is appearing. And she's pressing snack with the piece of food just to add that extra bit of scent to the button to really drive home the point. The sound of the button playing, being pressed, that is what's predicting the food appearing. And she's moving it a little, she's throwing the food a little bit further away so that Nushka then can turn back, refocus on the button. And with enough pairs like this, once you stop feeding them, if you pause for a second or even do what we call the button trap and intentionally get distracted by like your phone or something like that, which we're not all, but most of us tend to be very good at. Once you disengage momentarily, do they attempt to press the button? Do they try to get the game to continue going? That can be really motivating for them. And we had a rapid modeling challenge through February, and so we've got lots of videos of folks doing that at home with their learners, if that's helpful for you all to see. I'll show you where to find that in the resources as well. And Calvin added it in the chat. Thank you. Hi, Bernie. So again, the other piece of this, in addition to modeling, in addition to having it be fun and engaging, it's choosing first buttons and words that are setting you and your learner both up for success. So we want to start with 2 or 3 buttons, more than one, to help them realize that different buttons mean different things. That's how we can start with a food button and have them not think that all the buttons equal food, right? If others are play related, if others are outside, whatever is motivating of interest to them, that will help them realize, okay, different buttons mean different things. And that's, again, where you're modeling, pressing, and showing them these different outcomes. And ideally, our starting buttons should be motivating and meaningful to your individual learner or learners, easy and convenient to model immediately and say yes to, and concrete or actionable. We don't want our starting buttons to be too complicated, too confusing, too abstract, because the soundboard itself is an abstract tool that they're learning how to use. So ideally, we want to build a really strong foundation with easy to understand buttons, easy for us to follow through with as well, and then we can get to our more complicated, advanced concepts from there, abstract concepts, that sort of thing. So examples of common starting buttons are here, but let me know in the chat, are you debating between a few things? Are there things that you already started with that are working great? Maybe things that you learned that you would do different. Chime in, let us know. So examples of starting buttons: play, toy, and it's up to you if you start more general or if you start specific, and it's really up to what motivates your learner. So for my kittens, I did start with a general play. You can model it for all different styles of play, all different types of toys. That worked great. For my border collie, Adora, when we got our start 4.5 years ago, we started with ball specifically because for her, ball is life. It was then and it still is now. And so ball specifically was a more motivating subject to begin with on the button. So pick and choose depending on what works for them and what works for you and your household. Outside is on here as a common starting button. You heard Kelly start with that one, but it doesn't mean that it's the right one to start with for your household. And Kelly actually wound up changing that for Delmer. That didn't wind up being a motivating one for him. So think about if you live on the 10th floor, it's not going to be easy and convenient for you to model outside. So again, set yourself up for success. If your learner already has a dog door and can let themselves in and out, not going to be motivating to have that button. So pick and choose depending on what they need. Food buttons, again, super motivating. If you don't want to be dispensing quite as rapidly, you can have one that comes out just for that, for some training sessions and lives, on top of the fridge the rest of the time. Or you can pass something down like a puzzle button that they have to work longer and more to get food out of so that they're not just pressing something repeatedly because that can be tougher for us to follow through on depending. So puzzle is nice that it buys you a bit more time. It's a, busier activity for them, keeps their focus a bit longer. Physical affection, connection buttons tend to be very popular too. Hi, Ash friend. So pet scritches, brush is a popular one for some cats and others too. And Patricia mentioned we have bells at the door and they ring them to be let out. Excellent example. I'm glad you brought this up. So in that case, definitely leave the bells on the door. We want to be adding more ways to communicate, right? We're still listening to their body language. We're still following routines. We're still listening to vocalizations, things like bells. If they have tools like that already, in my experience, that means they translate to other tools. They understand that they can use buttons to represent different things pretty well. I wouldn't probably start with an outside button because they already have a way to let you know that they want to go out. But maybe down the line, having an outside button on your board still, and then still having the bells by the door, unless the bells are, driving you nuts. Or if anybody has already started maybe with an outside button by the back door, something like that, that can work great for a lot of learners. But the problem with having things too spread out is it makes it challenging for them to combine buttons, and it makes it harder for us to model. Maybe we can model, outside on our way out, but, once you get to the point of adding something like more or all done, that can be paired with more eat, more outside, more play. So if the buttons are too spread out, they're not able to kind of combine and advance. So having a central board with multiple buttons on it tends to be best for most. So thinking about what's going to be easy for you to model, what's convenient for you to get to, for your learner to get to, and starting with no more than 1 or 2 buttons per hex style tends to be best, even for small learners like terriers or even my kittens. I didn't have more than 2 buttons per hex tile when I started off, just so they weren't overwhelmed. I filled them in significantly more since then, but I want them feeling like they're set up for success, right? I don't want them frustrated, overwhelmed. So having it easy, convenient for you to model, for them to get to, and a lot of them like to watch us while they're pressing as well. They want to know that we're, going to respond, that we're watching, that we're reacting to their press. So having it somewhere that they can watch us. If your central location, is a hallway, but you spend all your time, just around the corner, at first it might be a challenge for them to leave you, to go out of sight, to go press. But that's where learners like Patricia's have often already, an advantage that they know how to use a tool and go out of sight and get the human attention that way. So Patricia, you might have more leeway about where you can place the buttons as a result. And they don't have to live in the same place forever. We're on I think, iteration number 4 since I moved in August, for adjusting where the board and the buttons are. Just making changes gradually and modeling any of those changes that you make as well. And so for those of you who are maybe already ready to start teaching advanced or abstract concepts, this is for you. Or for those of you who are wondering, how do I build this? Where does it go? Even if you're not ready to have these buttons down yet, thinking about how you're modeling things, where to build your board out, where to go from here can be helpful too. So for abstract concepts, these can be a lot more challenging for them, right? Again, we want to build a strong foundation first. Ideally, we want to be getting independent presses before we start adding these more abstract concepts that are more difficult for us to model. But whenever possible, we want to add abstract concepts in opposing pairs so that you can model them in opposition to one another. So that's why adding more and all done at the same time, you'll often see yes and no added at the same time, now and later, or even now, soon and later. Thinking about categories, how things kind of group together can be helpful too. And again, that way you can be modeling these in opposition to each other. And I mentioned before, more eat, you can be taking action, giving them food. More outside as you're going out. Now outside, yes, outside. These are all much more actionable as opposed to outside all done, later, no, and nothing's happening, right? That's a lot more challenging for them to understand. And even thinking about things like emotions as opposing pairs. So like a positive emotion like happy that you can add a pair with sad, mad, frustrated, some kind of negative emotion button. And so just be paying attention to how you're narrating these sorts of things, how you're labeling them, and what these contrasts are for you, because it only has to make sense to you and your learner. It doesn't have to, to anybody else necessarily. Safe and concerned is another popular pairing. But again, adjust this to your vocabulary. And if any of you speak multiple languages, that's fantastic. You can avoid homonyms really well that way. Pick and choose whatever you're saying most often to them. All right, so hopefully that's helpful for thinking through these things, having an idea of where things are going. Don't worry, I'll share more about continuing education as well as you advance. Thank you, Irma. So target training, that's the other piece of all of this. Not a requirement, but if you're modeling consistently, you've chosen motivating buttons, but your learner's not yet pressing independently, they just don't seem to have connected the dots that they can activate the buttons, that they can use this tool. Target training is great for helping them out with that, building confidence, a sense of agency. And for those already pressing who could maybe use more precision, think young learners going through growth spurts, or as you add more buttons into the hex tiles, if they seem like they're struggling to hit the exact one they want, target training can be great for practicing that eye-paw or eye-nose coordination, depending on how they naturally prefer to press. And let them discover their pressing style. They're all unique, they're all individual. I think I already mentioned tonight, but my little one-eyed guy, Bernie, he's a shoulder presser. He's incredibly accurate with laying on the buttons. He's not frustrated. I can understand him. I think that's fantastic. We are still working on some target training with his paw, just so that he has multiple ways of accessing and pressing the buttons. But as long as they're comfortable, they can develop their own style. Some cats headbutt, some dogs sit on the buttons. Let them find their way. So let me explain more about these links here. So the first one is target training with Alexis and Bunny. Yeah, and Patricia says, if they already know target training, should I just put 2 to 3 buttons down? Absolutely. Yeah, dive right in. And I would focus more on the modeling piece of things at this point if they already know how to activate the button. And Calvin added in the chat that Jason still butt dials. Hi, Katie Cat. Katie is, hi. Are we being a little bit demanding again, baby girl? We can have more pumpkin later. More pumpkin later. And then sometimes, slightly unrelated to what we're talking about this moment, but sometimes you will get connection-seeking, attention-seeking presses like this, acknowledging what they're pressing, telling them more later, depending on what it is that they're requesting. Maybe following through. I do try to say yes and follow through whenever I possibly can, but just maybe offering them pets, offering them attention, play, some way to connect. A mom button or your name can be really helpful and motivating for a lot of them too, particularly if they're just going to do, hi, you have water. I think you might just be, yes, okay, there we go, play. That makes more sense. You're looking for attention. Here we go. Kitty cat one, play. Yeah, so trying to say yes, finding acceptable outlets, even if you can't follow through on the exact thing that they want. So I can much more easily multitask with play than getting up and giving her more food, which she does not actually need at the moment. And Patricia, attention would not be too early to use now, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, hi, hello, you-hoo. Katie actually, button number 4 for her was a mom button because she was using food buttons to get my attention. So giving her a way to connect that wasn't just spamming the same button was really helpful for her. Yeah. And so for those of you who, even if you haven't done target training yet, again, no pressure necessarily to do so. Be modeling, choose these motivating buttons. But if your learner already knows how to do a high five, how to do, a nose touch, paw, shake, anything like that, you can totally just take the button out of the hex tile, cue them to give you a high five, and then follow through. Play! Yay! Or food, or whatever it is that you're modeling or working on, or whatever they are interested in the moment. So just, you can do that shortcut. Just know that once you work it back into the hex tile, it's going to look different, and it might take some work, having it back in the hex tile as well. Learning and progress is rarely linear. So that makes sense. Don't let that worry you if you see their uses kind of ebbing and flowing. And if, last night they had lovely independent presses, but then today they look a little bit confused when they're at the board, that's okay. And that's totally normal. When in doubt, help them out. If you see them trying to press the button, tapping on or near it, batting the sides, scratching around, when in doubt, help them out. Go ahead and press it for them. I don't want them frustrated. I don't want them overwhelmed, overstimulated. The buttons are a fun opportunity to connect, to be specific in their requests, right? But if they're overwhelmed, if they're like, gosh, this silly extra human step, that's not the point of doing this, right? So when in doubt, help them out. And we have another question. Does it make sense to use the name as a second button? Our kitty is very reactive to his name. Yeah, great question. Some folks have had a lot of success with starting early with names. What's challenging in my experience, and we already had all of the names down for the household when Bernie came to live with us in August. And he would sometimes press like Adora, my border collie's name, and I'm like, well, she's napping right now, and I can just kind of narrate or echo it. If he presses his own name, I can at least get up and come over, but then we're kind of, then what, now what? It doesn't give us quite as much actionable things. So typically what we recommend is maybe having at least the 2 really concrete, actionable, fun, activity-based buttons that you can respond to. Pets. I'm sorry, Katie Cat. Pets, yes. Even if it's just, a pets button, something like that, maybe in addition to the name. It's just a little bit harder when they press their name button, other than echoing it back. What exactly do you do with that press? Hi, Katie Cat. Hi. As opposed to, play, jumping up, grabbing a toy, outside, jumping up, going out. Yeah, totally up to you. Excellent questions, y'all. Let me know. It looks like I'm keeping an eye out for any more coming through here. So I've mentioned a few times we've got lots of great resources for you all. Be on the lookout for a follow-up email, but also this community within community.fluent.pet has so many great resources for you all. There's like 4.5 years worth of people's experiences under the welcome area here. We've got start button teaching, tons of in-depth information if you're the type that wants to read through all of that. We've got announcements, community events, FAQs, so many in-depth questions for those who like to dive in and have all that info. But no pressure, of course, if that is not your learning style. We have additional boot camps. If you missed part of tonight, if it would be helpful to attend another one, if you would like a household member to attend, under events, this is where you can find upcoming boot camps. You can also switch this to past and find recordings. And then under events, mentorship calls. These are free calls where you work with one of our guides. Sometimes it's myself, but we have an amazing group of folks in the community who have had success with their learners and are willing to share, their experiences. So we've got more in-depth stuff about first words if you feel like you want more assistance with that, target training specific help as well. And we're working on getting a lot more on the calendar for the coming weeks too. So keep an eye on that area. And again, this is all free right now. If you attended Button Bootcamp, it's just for folks like you who are able to access this section here. Resources. This is where you've got that link to the Self-Study Learning Center, paw targeting tutorial, button targeting tutorial for cats and small learners, the other one for cats. Those ones work on getting the weight shift to press. So even though they say, that they're for cats, if you have a small dog or rodent, whoever that is struggling to get the weight shift to press, that can be really helpful for them. Yes, kitty cat play. I'm sorry, mom work. And if you are a planner, we also have the soundboard planning tool. Just know that let your learner be the guide. Our best laid plans, right? We often need to change things up. So I find it helpful to have an idea of where things are going, but let their interests be your guide as to where things go. You might need to change up what gets added depending on, not only what they're interested in, but sudden changes in your environment, life changes, things like that. It's helpful to have a plan, but be willing to change it. And then all through here, great resources shared from my fellow bootcamp instructors, our community guides, that sort of thing. Discussion, if you want to ask questions, have a deep dive here, and then chat as well to share questions and updates. And then last thing I want to show you, definitely dive into all the in-depth discussion stuff here, but show off your soundboard. If you are looking to be inspired, have an idea for layouts, that sort of thing, check out show off your soundboard. It's really cool angled, like vertical display here. Here's somebody using that soundboard planning tool. If you are worried about floor space, you can consider a wall-mounted option, easier for dogs than cats on average, and that's easiest of all for nose pressers. So if you've got a learner that likes pressing with their nose, just think about what's comfortable for them to reach. If you're worried about floor space but don't want a wall-mounted board, you can do a corner board as well. And what I really like about Sasha's layout here is you can see that there's still enough room for the learner to get around behind the board and then stand back here in order to be able to still watch the human while they're pressing and not just be, facing a corner. That's a challenge for so many of them to need to disconnect from us at first while they're pressing. So something like this is a good compromise so that they can still have that maneuverability, get fully around the board, but you're not, taking over, your entire floor either. All right. Then we also have Let's Get Them Pressing course. This is a 4-week cohort-based class. It's taught by Alexis with Bunny and Diane of Neurodog Training. It is a fantastic course. So much great information, live coaching in addition to asynchronous materials. Wet food, oops, Katie cat play. So much great information here. Would love to have you all. I know Irma's been putting helpful links in the chat. There is a 25% off coupon code if you're interested. Put that in there as well. Here's some of the great topics covered. And if anybody is looking to add more buttons or hex tiles, we also have a 15% off coupon code that's good for the next 24 hours. Thank you, Irma. I'll go ahead. I can add that link to the chat, or the discount link to the chat there. And then if anybody is looking for or has feedback for us, we are always looking to improve. Would love to hear any feedback that you have. We've got a link for that Irma just added as well. Thank you. All right, y'all. So while the kittens here play in the background, I would love to answer additional questions that you all have. Do you have any follow-ups? Would it be easier to talk through anything? Raise your hand if so. And if you don't have questions yet, no worries. I know a lot of folks are just at the beginning of their journey. Again, that's why we have our ongoing mentorship calls, where you can always hop on a future boot camp too. It's not your only opportunity to get help, unless you want it to be. But we would love to keep helping. We can talk about buttons all day, as you're probably finding out. Katie, play. Biting her brother's tail. We'll see if she gets tackled. No questions so far, or no additional questions? I know y'all have had a lot of great questions already. Trying to think. Oh, hi. While you all think, I'm going to get Katie some more of her kibble. You have wet food, baby. Katie has wet food. You can have more kibble? More kibble. Yes. Yes. Are you just being attention seeking? Do you want your kibble? This might be on me for not, even though she should have been able to hear the kibble. This is where, remember, yes, kibble. You want? Katie, you want? You want? Okay, come here. So again, it takes them longer to process. Give them a little bit of time. Yes, you want to scoop? Good girl. Yeah, scoop for kibble. Here you go. Yes, Katie kibble. Yeah, so narrate all throughout. Be talking to them. Yeah, and Patricia, you got this. Dive on in, especially with having the target training already. Yeah, you've got this. And remember, you know your learner and your household best. You're the experts in them. We're just here to help with the nuance of, figuring out how the buttons fit into all of this, but you've got it. I'm excited to help out as you progress on your journey too. Katie's eating directly out of the kibble container instead of the multiple puzzles that I just put food in. Cats. And yes, so for attention, just press it, show them attention, either talking to them, focus on them. It doesn't have to be physical attention. That can be a separate pets button if you want. But just getting up, walking over to them, over to the board, or at least verbally acknowledging, even if you can't get up right then. Giving them attention in whatever capacity you can. Yeah, that tends to be so motivating for a lot of them. And thank you, Calvin. Thank you all so much for being here. All of your fantastic questions. Yeah, you've got this. I always say good luck, but you don't need luck. Again, you've got this. hope to see you all in future offerings that we have in our ongoing mentorship calls, a future boot camp, something like that, future event. But thank you all so much again for being here. Thank you, Irma. Thank you, Calvin. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Bye.